Trial Lawyers University, where the Titans come to train. Produced and powered by LawPods.
All right. Well, today we got renowned trial attorney John Martin, all the way from Worcester, Massachusetts. And just to be clear, he's only renowned in Worcester. So he's working on building his reputation past Worcester, but today's world, Boston. And John and I got to know each other a bit from a mutual friend named Jew.
That's right.
And then he gave me the privilege of coming out to the Massachusetts Trial Lawyers Association and presenting on some of the stuff that we've been teaching as far as performance and creating space and the connection stuff. So that was pretty cool time. And now we got John Martin. How's it out there today in Massachusetts? I know you're getting ready for trial, so you're busy.
Yeah, a little busy. Actually, we have like a 30-degree drop in temperature today, and it's raining.
You're so lucky.
Yeah, it's raining, which is good because we had a drought for about 10, 12 days. It's a big change in the weather today.
Yeah, it's still 100 degrees every day in Vegas, but it was only like 85 at night last night. So I'm like, oh my God, it's getting more
85
reasonable. Oh, it's getting reasonable. It's only 85 at night. It's much more comfortable. But John, so you're getting ready for trial. So you're
Yes.
about 2 weeks out. So tell us about those final 2 weeks of preparation for this trial. Wait, what's this trial about that you're going to be starting on the 12th of August? That's why you can't come to the Joe Free Trucking Boot Camp, because, you're going to trial. So that's a good excuse. That was the only excuse I was going to accept from John, just for the record.
Unfortunately, any opportunity to spend time with you and Joe. It's a construction case, an iron worker who injured his shoulder while he was replacing some braces on a very high-end construction project in a city called Cambridge, which is right outside of Boston.
Is that where Harvard is?
That is where Harvard is.
See, that is high end. Harvard, they're very rich.
Harvard.
Hopefully they don't make a deal with the whack job in Washington, but apparently it looks like they might. But anyways, that's a different story. So this construction case, the final 2 weeks of preparation. So what does that look like in John Martin's world?
So, well, it's interesting. So these are the only 2 weeks for me. I just came in on the case about a week ago. So I didn't work it up. It was worked up really well by the attorney who brought it to me. So that's good. And this is the first time I'm really heavily leaning into artificial intelligence and AI as part of case prep, and it's been pretty amazing. So just this morning before you, I had AI synthesizing a bunch of deposition transcripts and making me tables of page and line summaries where documents contradict witness testimony or witnesses contradict each other on some key issues. It's been incredibly amazing and time saving. So that's kind of cool.
Are you just using like Chat GPT Pro or something, and you're not using one of the, because like I know a lot of my friends that litigate and try cases use a software called Eve, an AI called Eve. I don't litigate, so when I haven't actually tested all this stuff, but the ones that have, they're like, wow, man, this is such a game changer for me. And
Yeah.
so it'd be interesting to see, a comparison of what Chat GPT can do versus an Eve, or maybe a Supio. These people that have built like these very large businesses just using, built for AI for trial lawyers is really what it's about.
Right.
So, and actually on TLU On Demand last year in Huntington Beach, they did like a 1 hour kind of face off between Eve and Supio, so people could kind of see what the best features of both were. So you can make it obviously people are spending a lot of money on AI, as long as it's providing the value. Who cares if it's, $100 grand? If it provides you $1 million worth of savings at a time, well, $100 grand, that's a 10-to-1 return. And, it seems like it's a no brainer.
Yeah, so I'm just using GPT Pro for right now. We're in the process of updating our Westlaw subscription with their co-counsel, and Eve's definitely on my radar. I've heard a lot of amazing things about it. But in terms of financial, I'm very worried about paralegals. This is absolutely incredible in terms of summarizing documents, creating documents. It's creating demonstratives for me. It's really phenomenal. I plugged in a bunch of old deposition transcripts from the same 30B6 representative where, in this case, one of our issues is multi-employer policy or a regulation under OSHA, and he's denying that that he maintained responsibility for the entirety of the jobs. And I popped in about 7 or 8 prior trial transcripts from him where he's said the exact opposite, and it took less than 2 minutes to have all the resources I need for a devastating cross. And now
Wow.
I just get to focus on, working on the nuanced stuff like creating space and
The performance, the
pushing the
performance,
narrative, the
the
betrayal story.
connection. Because John, with his success and stuff, has continued training. And I think it was last December you came to the Dark Arts Boot Camp with Dave Clark. Somewhat hesitantly, I will add. Let me just put for the record, John is not the best student in the world. It takes a lot of convincing to learn, but once his little epiphanies and his eyes open, then he becomes all in. Because
I
then what'd you
have
tell me? What'd you tell me? Like the first 2 days, you thought I was a fucking idiot and out of my mind, and then on the third day, it like snapped into place. Like, oh,
no,
this is actually
I think what I said was I didn't quite understand your teaching style for the first 2 days, but you might have read between the lines.
okay. Exactly. I think you got to take that. You got to have the ability as a trial lawyer to read a little bit in between the lines. These last 2 weeks, are you doing any focus groups? Are you practicing your crosses, your openings, anything like that, or just drafting it? So, what's the process for the final 2 weeks?
Absolutely. So we got a focus group tomorrow, which is going to be just concepts. And then we're going to have a final pretrial conference on Monday. And then after the final pretrial is when I'll know what type of voir dire we're going to have.
Are
And
you going
that
to do a focus group on your voir dire and opening? I hope.
100%
Great. Are
multiple.
you going to record that and then we can zoom on it and I can give you my feedback on it so you can go do the best performance of your life?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, great. Because, we're going to have to do a podcast after this one on, applying AI to, substantive jury trials because, that's kind of where we're going here. And even like Panish, even somebody like him at the top of his game is like, Ambrose, who's the AI? I need to learn this stuff. I'm like, Brian, I'll have, my guy Ryan from Eve meet with your associate or your paralegal. He's like, no, I want to learn it. I'm like, damn, guy's like 64 at the top of the trial world. He's like, now he's going to learn AI.
Hmm.
That's impressive.
It
But he's
is.
such, he's such a,
I've only met him once, but I mean, he's the guy. He's
he
amazing.
is, keeps learning, keeps, getting better. And that's what's important in this game is continuing consistent improvement. So, John, you didn't come to this lawyering thing the most direct route. So, tell us a little bit how it came to little Johnny's mind and when it came to little Johnny's mind that, hey, I need to become a trial lawyer.
I definitely, like you said, was a terrible student. I'd never really enjoyed school. I hated school. I got into a lot of trouble. I did fine, and like standardized testing, I always ended up in kind of advanced courses. But I had no interest in college. I came out of college and did a lot of traveling, a lot of community service, a lot of theater, things like that. And then I went to work and I was just working. I didn't go to law school until I had a bad experience with a lawyer. And then my entire career was basically out of spite, to be honest.
So, after college, because I know you said you did traveling and performing. So, what was that about? And then was that after college or before college?
I'm sorry, that was after high school. It was a program called Up with People, which was a nonprofit organization. You've heard of it?
I remember that because I remember seeing it. I always thought, wow, who the fuck would go travel around the country and do this weird shit for no money? Now I finally met somebody. And then I was like, I should have gone down that weird shit for no money. I might have had a more fun experience instead of just high school, college, law school, no breaks,
Yeah.
grind through. Where am I going? I don't know, but I wish I had had more detours like that. So tell us about your experience, doing that and how
Yeah,
it
well, not
formed
only
you.
is it for no money, you actually pay for it.
Right?
It
It's
was
like
like
a negative.
a tuition-based thing. So yeah, no, it was great. You go out to Colorado, you spend 6 weeks in Colorado, and you learn this kind of off Broadway show. There's singing, dancing, stuff like that. Some people go on the behind the scenes stuff and on the lighting crew and the sound crew. Some
Where were
people
you?
performers. I was a performer and I was on the staging crew. I packed and unpacked the truck. It was like an 18-wheeler.
So you're a performer. People that want to become trial lawyers and know this from a young age, every chance that they get a chance to perform in front of others
Yeah.
is one step closer to those 8-figure verdicts because it takes so much time and on your feet and under that pressure to get comfortable. It's not comfortable. Like there's a
Mhm.
point. I think there's 3 stages of when you're in front of people. One is terror, which is where most of us start out, like just terror, just
Yeah.
stilted by fear, then becomes comfortable. You're like, okay, I could do this. And the third one is where you actually get energy. Like
Mm.
you stand in front of them and you feel their energy, and their energy energizes you.
Yeah.
Right. And then when
Yeah.
you're there, like that's how I feel when I stand up. I know when, now, and I've been through all, because as I built first Trojan horse, then case analysis, then trial lawyers university, I've gotten to be, fortunately for me, and I'm blessed, I got to be on more stages. And when I'm on stages, in front of stages where like I have cold audiences, I mean, at TLU, like Huntington Beach, when I'm teaching there, it's a warm audience because, the people are there because they choose to be there, because there's 12 selections of what they want to learn. And so if somebody
Mhm.
comes in, whatever it is that you wrote up to your teaching, they're sitting in your class, that is a warm audience because they have chosen to be with you, as opposed to when you go speak, like when I came to, the Massachusetts Trial Lawyers Association spoke, like I didn't know you except talking to you on the phone, maybe knew 2 or 3 people in there. And so, and I'm coming up with some stuff that, that's why I say you have the most homogeneous group I've ever met of trial lawyers. I mean, I've
Yeah.
never seen so many white people in the same place, mostly male, all wearing suits. I'm like, who the fuck wears a suit to a CLE? I'm like, come to Massachusetts. We wear suits during CLEs. I'm like, okay, it sounds like fun, but I'm going to be wearing, I'll wear a collared polo shirt. That's as most I'm getting dressed up. I probably had this t-shirt on. You know, I generally don't go anywhere without my TLU t-shirt on. So, but anyways, it's pretty great. So that performance, how long did you do the Up With People for?
I was there for a year as a student.
And how do you think that experience really helped inform you later on or instruct you in being a trial lawyer?
Oh, that's a great question. In many ways, I felt like I grew or matured like 10 years in that one year. Because, I came out of high school and I was really kind of, been in the same little town my whole life. I got exposed to all these other cultures. But one thing about it that really impacted me was I loved the service that we did. Like we went into communities and we went into really, really downtrodden parts of their community. And sometimes it would be serious stuff. Sometimes it would be as simple as cleaning parks. But like just that idea of service and seeing results and making other people's lives better and doing that as a proactive thing, like going out and seeking things that needed to be fixed. I really loved that. And that stuck with me, to this day. I really enjoy that.
No, it's
But
such
I
a
want to
great.
answer your first question that you didn't let me answer yet was I a performer? And you got to remember that this was 1997. I had a rap song. I was a rapper. And
Really?
a lot of people think from that era, there's still VHS tapes of me rapping, but a lot of people
Are
think
they on
that
YouTube?
no, there's a
Come on.
VHS tape, literally a physical VHS tape. But a lot of people think that I kind of set the stage for Eminem.
Or the Beastie Boys, or the Beastie Boys were already out by
The
then.
Beastie Boys predated me, but yeah, I was kind of like the bridge.
The Bridge. They were the Jewish rappers. You were the Irish Christian rapper or Catholic rapper.
That's right. That's right.
You fired up Eminem. Eminem's from Detroit. Now, if you lived south of 8 Mile or an 8 Mile like Eminem did, you might not. Do you remember what your rap? What was like? Well, don't do it
Um,
unless you remember it and you feel like you can do it.
I don't feel like I could do
I
that.
ain't the Beastie Boys. I ain't Run DMC. I'm from a hood in Detroit. My name is Danny D. That was my rap song. But anyways, all right. So you said you became a lawyer out of spite. That's
Yeah.
what motivated you. So spite has some anger and piss off in it. So what pissed you off to get you to, well, first you had to get to college, and then because when you left high school, you did the Up With People. So college wasn't really on your, in fact, did you even graduate from high school?
So actually, not originally. I'd failed a math class, and they were like, "We'll let you walk the stage, but you're not going to get a diploma. You got to go to a community college and finish the math course, and then you can come get your diploma." And I was just like, "I don't care. You can keep it."
Shove your diploma up your ass,
Which
because
was
that's
really frustrating for my parents because I went to like a legit college prep high school, and like they
like
were
a,
really frustrated because I kept getting like crazy standardized test scores. I think the SAT was like 1600 back then or something, and I got like a 1330. And then, I didn't get my diploma. My father was just beside himself. He's like, "What the fuck, dude?"
I can
And I was
imagine
like,
because I went to private Catholic schools myself, and everybody went to college. Like 98% of the class went to college, and the 2% that didn't, for those are the crazy people that went into the military.
Mhm.
And so, but I mean, but like almost nobody went to work. They just went to college. And so you don't get your degree, diploma right away. But then when you realize that you're going to need to go to college, you go finish your diploma.
Yeah, basically, that's exactly what
Okay.
happened.
And then college. So you go to college. Tell us, well, how'd you decide that you need to go to law school? So you had to go to college before you go to law school. But what motivated that?
So I was engaged, met a girl, fell in love, and then her mom got diagnosed with cancer. And what happened was she had this broken rib with no fall. She's only like 41, 42 years old, just a couple years younger than me now. The doctor kept fluffing it off, fluffing it off, fluffing it off. Finally, she goes to a new doctor. Turns out that she's got kidney cancer and it's metastasized, and that broken rib is a tumor. A metastasized tumor. So, we get her to the best doctors we can, which in Boston there's a lot of them, and then we started calling lawyers, like the best lawyers in Boston. Like to this day, I know that they're the best Boston med mal attorneys, and they were non-responsive. They wouldn't answer phone calls. They would take the intakes and then not give us any information. When we finally did get somebody on the phone, they said it was very clear liability, but they thought it was tough causation and they couldn't make the investment, blah, 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 blah. And I just got kind of mad about that and was like, I think I could do a lot better for people in this situation. So I looked at law school, saw I needed a degree, and got my math course done, got my diploma, finished a 4-year degree in about 24, 25 months, and went to law school.
And what law school did you go to?
I went to Suffolk University Law School.
And how was that experience?
Interesting. So the first year was shocking. Like it was just not at all what I thought the practice of law was going to be about. I was going exclusively to be a trial lawyer. I was going exclusively to be a plaintiff's lawyer, and of course, there's none of that shit in the first year, right? I was, yeah, and I was a
Like,
night
what?
student too, by the way. And so I worked in the day, so it was like you're finding time to study this and that, blah blah blah. But the second year, I found out that Suffolk had like this nationally ranked, really prestigious, really successful mock trial program. And I tried out for the mock trial team. And then after that, law school was one of the best experiences of my life because I loved that mock trial team.
When I was younger, I used to think mock trial or moot court, all that stuff in law school was a complete waste of time
Yeah.
because they're, like you're being instructed by idiots. Like, I mean, not, but by people that don't really have skills. Like when a judge is teaching a moot court or mock trial course, I'm like, what judge, if the judge had any skills, I don't think they'd be sitting on their butt behind the bench. I'm just saying if they thought they had trial lawyering skills.
Hmm.
And frankly, the same goes for prosecutors because that was about the only people that were teaching those classes were in my school were judges and, prosecutors. And again, if a prosecutor had any skills, they wouldn't be a prosecutor, right? The skill
I
is
didn't know
they
that.
can, do the robotic, mundane, grinding job and, for their paycheck. That's their skill and keep focused on it. But if they had any skills, they'd be do something where they could actually make some money, frankly. And
Yeah.
and it's much more challenging to be a criminal defense lawyer. Not that there's any money in that, God knows, but unless you're representing in Massachusetts like a Whitey Bulger, but for the regular criminal defense lawyer, it's an impossible living. But in hindsight, now I can see the real value of it, and so I kind of missed out on that. Delayed my growth as a trial lawyer quite a bit because I didn't, I was kind of anti-participation because I was so cool.
It's just like anything else though, right? Because there actually is a lot of what you're saying, and I think that there is a lot of bad teaching that goes on out there. But then there's also a bunch of programs that have these incredible trial lawyers or incredible teachers that are coaching them, and they're just so successful. There's a bunch of them. There's Loyola Los Angeles with Karen Kohler out there. There's Judge Jim Roberts has got Cumberland. Baylor Law School is amazing. And I really lucked out because at Suffolk there was Tim Wilton, and he'd been a really successful mock trial coach and was a great trial lawyer and taught people to do the right things the right way. And it was like just invaluable.
Yeah, there was a couple mock trial coaches that came from I think Southern Texas College of Law in Houston to my last Huntington Beach program. And when I was reading their applications, what they want, and one was like, better performance skills so I could teach my mock trial better. I'm like, oh man, that's dope. Cause like I've gotten, cause like at TLU Huntington Beach, we give any law student that wants to come and be a plaintiff's lawyer, I give them a full scholarship, but they have to help out a couple hours a day, kind of earn it, but that helps them a lot because then they get to like, if they're helping out with registration, they get to meet a lot of people, right? Or going out and, greeting people at the front door, whatever they're doing to get them involved with the lawyers. Because so many times I see at these programs where they invite law students, which I think is great, but then the law students all hang out together like this little clique of, mice because they're comfortable and they're not meeting people. And so, I'm really working to expand my law student attendees. So this is for everybody listening to this. If you're a law student or you know a law student that would like to greatly improve their lives and their potentials as a trial lawyer, they can shoot me. They go to our website at tlubeach.com or Trial Lawyers University and apply for a scholarship. And it's pretty solid, unless they're complete jackasses, that they would get a scholarship to come to TLU.
What a
And
great way to meet potential first employers too,
oh
because
yeah,
you find a college student who's going to a TLU and is passionate about this, and like half the concerns about the interview process is right out the window. You're like, this is the real deal.
right. Somebody that's got some, because everybody phones it in during an interview. Oh, I'm going to be great. I want to be a trial lawyer. Then they get to work and they're like, 5 o'clock rolls around and it's a minute two and they're standing at the elevator and you're like, how the fuck do you think that you're going to become a lawyer with
Right.
this work ethic, right? But you don't know about people until you work with them or until
Mhm.
you see them. And then even at the conference, you can see do they go off by themselves or do they go sit down at a table with a bunch of strangers and say, hey, I'm Dan, I'm a law student. Who are you folks, right? And
Mhm.
put their hand out and shake, hey, nice to meet you. I mean, it's real simple to meet new people and network at these things if you put out the effort, but most people are scared. Most people won't step out of their comfort zones and they leave, and their lives are mediocre as a result of it, because they don't seize the opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not unique just to lawyers, but it is true for lawyers. The people who are really hitting that next level just have a level of obsession and commitment that's really remarkable. And one of the things you're always afraid of when you're hiring somebody is you're like, I just don't want somebody who's going to come in and be a Joe Friday and just ruin the vibe. And I'd rather do it myself than deal with that shit.
Exactly. I mean, and ruin, and affect the culture or that they're not a good hire and then you got to fire them. Then you don't look like a very good leader who, with good judgment because look, you just hired this schmuck.
Yeah.
So these are the challenges. Oh yeah. The same thing though. If there's anybody listening to this that is a mock trial coach that wants to really improve their trial coaching skills, well, again, just give me a call. You just call me on my cell, which is 248-808-3130. Because I do these boot camps training these performance skills, and we'll talk a little bit about more at that later. But I can let you come to the boot camp and give you, tuition assistance or a scholarship so you can learn these skills as long as you go back there and you start teaching them to these law students that want to become trial lawyers. That's kind of like, I'm happy to give it away, but you got to you got to give it away too. You got to pay it forward if it's given. It's kind of the philosophy on it.
I think that we're all selfish. We can count on that about being an animal. It's a selfish, self-serving animal. So let's use that to our benefit.
Your fiance's wife is diagnosed and, got this horrible thing with the cancer. I assume that passed from it shortly thereafter.
She did pass. Yeah, she passed about halfway through my second year of law school.
Oh, cancer is
Really
always
tough. She's
rough.
less than 45 years old. It was really
Oof.
tough.
Yeah.
Brutal.
There's always the debate between is it good to go fast or when you go or good to go slow? You go fast, it's over. You go slow, but you don't get to say goodbye to anybody. Nobody
Yeah.
knows you're leaving, right? You go slow like cancer because my mom died from cancer, but, it was horrible. But still, where the end is near. To be there spending time with a person. To be there, right? You don't know to be there if somebody dies in a car wreck. And
Yeah.
so I think
When
with the slow,
somebody dies the way that she did, eventually the death is an act of mercy.
yes.
That's tough, but you're right. There were a lot of heartfelt conversations. There were a lot of heartfelt moments, a lot of things that were very meaningful and beautiful that came from it. But yeah, I'm glad we don't get to choose which one. Put it that way.
Right? Or which way we go.
Yeah.
Thank God, because these are tough
Thank God.
choices. These are tough choices. So you're in Suffolk, you're thriving at mock trial, and so you get out of school and tell us about the adventure getting to where you are today. You get out of school, it's that first job with a plaintiff's trial firm with a great mentor, and you're ready to rock and roll.
None of that happened. So I graduated right in the middle of the real estate collapse in 2008 and 2009, and I had a bunch of job offers. I'd gotten in my head that in order to do big, important big money, high stakes litigation. I needed to go to a big firm. So I interviewed really deep with like 5 different big firms. I got a couple of commitment letters. And then in the 3 months before I graduated, about 3,400 lawyers got laid off from the big firms, and the job market was just flooded. And all of us lost our commitment letters. All of us lost our first year jobs. So I ended up at a debt collection law firm.
Well, I'm sure there was a lot of that during the 2008 meltdown.
They were making money hand over fist, those guys, will tell you what.
You know what? Like all that crazy bullshit, the real estate. Because like when I moved to California, when I lived in Michigan, my house was in foreclosure. I mean, that's what like the turmoil I was in financially, because it's just like everything was upside down. The whole world was upside down then.
So what's vicious though is, dude, is so the credit card companies, they just write you off and then they put you into this big investment portfolio and they sell your debt to these companies for like pennies on the dollar. And then what the collections firm do is usually the collections firm is a part owner of the buyer and then they just go out and collect. So they've bought your $2,500 credit card debt for like, you know, $27. And it's just a numbers game if people start paying off. And the profits are like outrageous, outrageous.
How long did your legal career thrive at the debt collection agency for?
Through one court appearance, I showed up and interviewed about 72 debtors. And I reported to the judge that about 55 of them were judgment proof because they were disabled or they were elderly or other factors. And apparently the rule is you're not supposed to declare that anyone is judgment proof ever.
That's the
So
rule at the collections firm.
that's the rule at the collections firm. No one's ever judgment proof. So yeah, they no longer needed my services.
So where'd you
What was lucky
transition to?
though is there was a younger lawyer there who was starting a general practice firm, and he just kept me with him. And he said, "You stay away from those guys. You just work with me now." Because he wanted a trial lawyer. He wanted to do personal injury, and he wanted to do things. And I had convinced him that because of mock trial that could be me.
Hey, I thrived at mock trial.
Yeah,
Let
yeah,
me be
yeah.
your trial lawyer.
Yeah,
All
and this
right.
this guy was cool with it. He was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's try it." So I tried our cases, and we went out and we beat the streets, and we got employment cases, criminal cases, some
How
personal
long did
injury
you
cases.
spend at this new business entity?
Simon and I were together for 5 years, and we actually became partners for a brief stint. And then I got an opportunity to go with kind of a high end firm, a high end plaintiffs firm. So we broke up then. But yeah, we spent 5 years together. We did a lot of good work.
So you dissed them for the bigger, better deal, is what you're saying?
I mean,
You're like,
that's
we're friends, but I am a businessman.
I gotta check with AI how to answer that one. That was a tough.
Uh,
That was a tough phrasing. No, I mean we just kind of were going like that, and we both knew it. We talked about it, and it was on good terms. We're still really good friends. But I really wanted to get into contingency stuff where we were spending a lot of money on cases to get really big verdicts. And Simon was really running a good employment practice that didn't have a lot of cash outlaid, and he didn't really want to get into high risk stuff. And it was fine. It was good.
how many cases did you try in those 5 years?
Well, criminal cases probably 50 or 60. Civil, I would say in federal or superior court, maybe 5. And then in the district court, a few car accident cases, maybe another 5 or 10.
And so do you remember your first civil jury trial?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. You never forget that one.
Right. So what was that about?
So that was Kamal Muhammad Ali versus the Boy Scouts of America. Kamal had represented himself all the way up to the summary judgment hearing because he couldn't get a lawyer to take the case. And then he called us and asked us for help with the summary judgment. And what had happened with the court for various reasons, I think because the defense lawyer was fucking with him, he had a summary judgment hearing on August 26th and then a trial date scheduled for September 26th. So we came into the case in the beginning of August and asked the judge to let us file an opposition to summary judgment before the hearing. And luckily, the judge was very compassionate about the fact that he'd been pro se, and they let us get through some procedural loopholes to get something on the record for him.
Why was he suing the Boy Scouts of America?
So what happened with Kamal was he came in and he got this position, and there's a bunch of them where they're called community representatives. And one of there's 2 primary objectives for community representatives. One right is to drive up membership, and the other 2 is to raise money. They're fundraisers. And one of the big things they did, at least at the time, was popcorn sales. So Kamal's got one manager in the beginning of the first 2 years of his career. And what Kamal's doing is going to the mosques and he's generating all these new members, all these new little scouts, and he's just selling popcorn hand over fist. He very quickly becomes the biggest popcorn salesman in central Massachusetts. And the boss recommends him for this like flagship or blue chip rather executive level training program. It's not a promotion, but nobody really gets promoted at the Boy Scouts until they go through this training program. And Kamal's like a rising star. So that boss leaves, retires, and gets replaced by a new one. And the new one pulls away the training and starts, you know, you know how it goes, just second guessing everything he does, constant conflict. So Kamal quits. He resigned because he felt like he was being harassed. And then he filed a lawsuit saying that he'd been constructively discharged based on discrimination.
And was that the truth?
The jury decided that it was.
All right. So tell us just a little bit about the final resolution.
We asked for and received $152,500.
Hold on a second. This is your first civil jury trial. So
Yeah,
how'd the voir dire go?
So voir dire with Judge Hillman, who is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest judges that has ever lived. The one thing we disagree on is voir dire. It was judge-conducted sidebar voir dire. If we had any follow-up questions, we could ask him to ask the follow-up questions. And I very quickly learned that he does not believe in follow-up questions. So
basically,
the jury selection took maybe 15, 20 minutes.
All right. So what kind of structure did you use for your opening joke?
So,
I know you had no structure. You just told the story, whatever.
No, not at all. Not at all. I used the mock trial structure. Ladies and
All right.
gentlemen, I'm going to prove 3 things to you. And those 3 things are 1, 2, 3. If you believe all of them, the law requires that you enter a verdict for the plaintiff. Now, let me tell you what happened in this case. And then I told the story.
All
Then I
right.
go back and I explain how we're going to prove each of the 3 points. And then I conclude.
Look at you. Mock trial paid off. So what was the final verdict?
So we asked them for $152,500 in economic losses. They gave him that. And then in the First Circuit, you're not allowed to suggest a number for things like emotional distress, pain and suffering, or punitives. They gave us the maximum allowable by law on punitives, which was $300,000. And they zeroed us out on emotional distress.
What do you think? How do you think that case would have been different today?
So I spent years trying to figure out the emotional distress problem. I think we would have gotten a very significant verdict for emotional distress. And I think that I could have, if I'd been involved in the case earlier, certainly we would have brought state law claims that didn't impose those kind of caps on punitives. And I think we could have tagged them for multiple 7 figures, honestly, if I had it now.
And you talk about, the ability to explain the emotional distress damages. So what have you done, or how is this, how have you evolved in your ability to communicate pain and suffering, emotional distress?
So this was confounding to me for years. I repeatedly had very low emotional distress or zeros on emotional distress for a long time. And it's been a very circuitous process. But I think it really starts in voir dire. And you first have to really get people to affirm that they believe and will treat emotional and psychological injuries and damages just as seriously as they would physical, right? It starts there, really using direct examination and the before and after witnesses to really bring it alive in a way that resonates with people. And the themes that I find that resonate with juries the most are isolation, loneliness, the loss of sense of self, all those different types of things. And it really goes deeply, and I think you do one of the best, Dan, deeply into witness prep, because your witness has to be able to talk about some stuff and get vulnerable about some things that most of us would have a hard time doing on one-on-one, never mind in front of a group of strangers, right?
Yeah. And witness prep, I think, is such a critical skill that most lawyers never study, never try to figure out the best practices on, often delegate to like their lowest employee just to get through it. And they put their client up there in deposition and just fucking grip the desk, and they get mad at the client for fucking up the deposition, or,
Oh, yeah.
or freezing up at trial because of the pressure. So,
Or they're saying things like, try to answer yes or no, don't give too much information,
don't volunteer anything.
don't
Keep it
volunteer
short.
anything. And it's like, so this guy Kamal, just to keep using Kamal as an example, Kamal really loved bringing children from the community in the mosque into this, what he thought was a very prestigious American institution. He felt like he was helping kind of marry these
Cultures.
cultures and these people who'd moved here and were adjusting. And now don't forget, this is like 2010. We're at war, and things are difficult for Muslims at airports. If you remember back then, I mean, it was tough
Back
for
then, I don't think
Muslims.
it's not that much easier these days with the new administration. I mean,
Well, that's yeah,
yeah.
you're probably right. You're probably right. But there was a period of time where I think it might have been a little bit better. But 2010 was a rough time
Mhm.
for Muslim Americans, or newly, American citizens. And he really felt like he was bridging that. And to have that ripped away, and he was supporting his family, to have that ripped away, like he had to talk about some stuff. And have you met guys from Egypt? These are macho dudes. They don't talk about their feelings. They're like iron workers, okay? Like I'm asking him to tell them about how you're embarrassed, and how it shamed you, for people that are raised to not ever be shamed, and to always be proud, to always be fight. And he did it. He did
Yeah.
it, but he would have done it better if I had better coaching and better skills at the time.
Well, lucky for you, John Martin, and the people in this world, there is TLU on demand. And actually, I did a very in-depth witness preparation video on there it was right before the pandemic. I did it part of trial school.
And so you have to practice in the deposition. You practice in motion hearings. You practice at the grocery store. That's why you have a family. You practice on them. You have to keep the skill up or it erodes. It's simple as that.
Somebody give us an overview of this case.
Or I call wowing it. And what I mean by wisdom of the wise is, why are we still right in spite of this fact?
These are just some of the clips when I was cross-examined 10 years ago, remember that.
About 11 o'clock at night, and he leaves this message. I got a brilliant idea. Every conversation he starts, I have a brilliant idea.
But welcome, everybody. We've got a good crowd here today.
I think the key to witness preparation is to teach the client, the witness, how to transport. And so when I say transport, I mean just like Scotty in Star Trek, where he pushes a button and the person disappears in one place and they reappear in another place in time. And to get the person to be able to transport themselves back to the scene of the crash or to their recovery when they're in the hospital, and really be there and tell the story from back there. So that way the jury not only hears it, but they experience it. And they witness it. And when you let people witness what happened, you allow them to, and they experience it, they can't be talked out of it. But it takes patience. It takes empathy. That's one of the reasons why I don't do it too much anymore, because it was too emotionally draining to go into these depths of human suffering. And, because people that have been traumatized or suffered serious injury, let's just be honest, their lives been taken from them and they're depressed. And, I'm sure we've all experienced depression at some state or another, whether it lasted an hour or 6 months or, they're living it now. It's a horrible, horrible thing to be depressed, where you don't want to get out of bed, where your mind doesn't really work. And it's just everything. I remember my own experience with that, going to court. This happened about like 2012. I'd be in front of it with a client. I was so wound up in the tragedy of what was going on with my life at the time. I couldn't remember the client's name. You know what I mean? And it was terrible because I just felt like the world was crumbling, and, you can't talk about it with anybody because you don't want to bring your friends down. And people are like, oh, come on, snap out of it. Life's great. And you're like, sure. Like, your life might be great. My life sucks. I'm going to keep it right here by myself. And even though logically, you shouldn't be there, you're still there. And so,
yeah, I mean, your mind can get very, very reptilian as a defense mechanism, and it's really tough to get through to people if they're in that kind of shock.
the thing is they bury it, right? We all bury it, and then they just bury it as deep as possible. So then they're all happy, shiny people again.
Oh
And
yeah.
here comes the trial lawyer, says, "Hey, I know, John, you're doing much better, and I'm glad to see you got your life together. But now we got to go get the money. So we have to go do a deposition. So I have to take you into these dark places, into these dark holes, and you need to relive this experience from that dark, dark place." And that's just what it is, and that's how we're gonna get the money. And some clients are like, okay with it, but most are like, no fucking way, because I'm not gonna go back there and re-experience that because I don't want to get trapped back into that nightmare called depression. And
Yeah.
so I mean, which is normal, right? Why would you want to, and they're afraid if they go and talk about it, they won't get back out. And
It
so
also just gets normalized. Like on a daily basis, people just kind of start to not notice the different limitations and the different things. Other times, like, I've had so many experiences where somebody comes in with a serious injury, and they get a pretty good job, and they get a pretty good marriage, and they get a pretty good life. And then 18, 24 months later, the job is gone, the wife is gone. They're asking me for a referral to somebody to represent them on a DUI. Like, life keeps going, man.
and for some funding company give them some money at 500% interest so they can make it, and you're like,
Yeah.
makes your life way harder to settle that case in the future, right? If it even becomes a case, because it's like,
Yeah.
it's not easy. It's not easy, and it takes work. Work and preparation. Work and preparation.
So what's the first thing you say on cross-examination of the defendant in the defense's case in chief to affirm what the jury's feeling and thinking?
I've been going to trial lawyer university for years now, Huntington Beach, Las Vegas. It really is the only conference, I think, in the country. You can forget all the rest of them.
So moving on from that first initial victory, though, how many trials do you think you've done in your career now?
Somewhere between, just civil, superior, federal court, somewhere between 35 and 40.
That's a good number. And you've been practicing how many years? What, 17 now?
Since
16?
2009, so be my
16.
16 years this December.
Right. But you were talking about your wife and getting married, but while you were in law school, because you became a dad in law school, is that right?
No, I became a dad a few years after, in
Okay.
2015.
In 2015. And
Mhm.
so tell us about, because I know your son Jack is especially important person in your life, because I know a lot of times we're
Yeah.
at conferences and it's Friday and you're like, I'm going home, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm like, and this, I think, where were we? In Sanford? We were someplace way far away, like Nashville or San Francisco or someplace.
Miami.
Miami.
It's so funny that you remember that because I forgot about that. But yeah, we were in Miami, and I promised him I was taking him to Monster Trucks on Saturday morning. So I went to Miami Friday, did some stuff that needed to be done, flew back for the Monster Trucks, and I was back with you again Saturday night.
That is a dad's commitment to his word to his son. So tell us a little bit about, raising Jack and how that's informed your life as a trial lawyer and as a human being.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to interrupt me because I could go on forever. But Jack's just unbelievable. So Jack was born with a genetic condition called Smith-Lemli-Opitz, which means that his body did not produce cholesterol in utero, and cholesterol is very, very important for organ development. So he had some very significant cognitive and physical disabilities and will for the rest of his life. But he also had something called pulmonary vein stenosis, which is a absolutely ruthless fatal disease where the pulmonary veins connecting the heart to the lungs get clogged with something very similar to cancer. It's not cancerous cells, but it gets clogged and it grows in a similar way, and it keeps coming back in a similar way. So at 4 months old, he had his first open heart surgery, and then had inpatient and outpatient chemotherapy for the next 3 years, heart catheterizations every 6 to 8 weeks. He's doing really well now. He's in complete remission at 10 years old. But to put it in perspective, when he turned 3, he weighed 12 pounds between chemo and being sick and everything like that. He couldn't sit up. So we basically had him in the infant stage for 3 full years, which some parts of that were kind of nice, actually. Babies are sweet. But then once 3 years came around, they were able to take him off the chemo. He very quickly started learning to walk and developing in all kinds of ways, and he's doing well. He's thriving.
Great. Thank goodness. Getting better every day.
Yeah.
And I know it's a big commitment in your life to, help, to be part of that for your family, and your wife has devoted her life to your son too. What lessons do you think you learned from these last 10 years that, that I know, I mean, again, not to go back, but just help you, because it's about being the greatest trial lawyer that you can be. And our life experiences shape us, and so do
Yeah.
our challenges that maybe if we chose, we wouldn't bring them upon ourselves, but that's not the way
Yeah.
the world works.
Yeah. It's interesting because I would never wish what Jack's gone through on anyone, or my wife or I, but there's been so many absolute miracles and transformations along the way. So when you say, how did it change you? It would be easier to say how it didn't. It changed everything. In terms of being a trial lawyer, I think the two most important things that have changed in me as a direct result of Jack is my ability to let go of being obsessed with the outcome and to be more focused on the process. And I just feel fearless now
In the courtroom.
everywhere, but yeah, especially in the courtroom.
You know what? That's right. Everywhere, right? Because when you've been through a lot, there's nothing you can't handle, right? And that gives you courage. I mean, the truth is, it's like this adversity, whatever adversities we have to experience as human beings, generally, the more we go through, like I feel like I've been through so much adversity in my life. I'm like, just some of these things where people like happen to them, and they're like go into these moments of break. I'm like,
Yeah.
all of my setbacks have prepared me for to handle the future ones.
Well, so it's really interesting because when you were talking about emotional distress and were my emotional distress verdicts so small in the beginning, and why are they so good now? Right. One thing I can remember is in the beginning, trials were terrifying. I'm up all night. I'm waking up early. I'm pacing around the courtroom. I'm shaking. I'm sweating. My hands, right? When the trial starts, and you get into that flow state and it's good, but in the in-betweens, it's very miserable, right? But when you hand over your baby to a surgeon with a 65% chance of getting them back, you're just stripped of all ego. You're stripped of every shred of anything other than humility and pleas and gratitude, right? So the next time you walk into a courtroom, like my heart doesn't even race. I'm focused. I'm calm. I'm like, this is nothing. I'm not worried if I lose, am I going to be embarrassed? I'm not worried if I lose, is this person's life going to be destroyed? Because I know that there are all these other ways that this person's life can go in a positive way, and I can help with that too. It's not all about winning and losing. It's all about doing the right thing the best that you can.
Being prepared to every extent you can be, and doing the work before you get there. And there's a lot of work to be done before you step into that courtroom, which we all know.
Not just work on the case too, but I think that's one of the things that you talk about a lot, and I couldn't agree with it more. Work on yourself, work on your skills, work on your strategies, work on all those things. Like you have to turn yourself into an absolute warrior with a lot of different skill sets in order to win trials on a consistent basis, in order to win big verdicts on a consistent basis. You have to develop and create yourself, not just your case.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I was going to say, like, when people call me like a month before their trial, and they're like, oh, I need some help with my performance and presentation skills, or my voir dire, my cross-examination, my witness prep and direct. I'm like, yes, we all do, but you're a month out. You're obsessed with the case right now. They're like, oh, just teach me in my case. I'm like, that's very difficult to do, because so much of your bandwidth is used up just on on what you consider the evidence. It's so important, every detail, that you can't focus your mind on, the performance things. Like, what is your face telling people? Is your face warm, or is it curious when you ask a question, or is it just simply like nervous? Is you're nervous, you look mean and afraid, right? And so that's what people's face look like when they're looking at you, because you're making them feel that, like, why are you so nervous? Why are you so tense? Because you're making me tense. And so it takes a lot, the rhetoric of voir dire, we talked about that, and, a little bit about Clark, but like voir dire, you look at any great lawyer and you read their transcripts, You can read 3 of their transcripts and you will see such similarity in their questions and language. You would think they were like the same one, because people, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, all the great trial lawyers use scripts. They all, repeat the same pattern of words and language in their questioning and their follow-ups over and over, because it's a script. It's a fucking pattern.
I got to tell you, I try the same case every time.
Well,
Every time.
you do. Well, you do. You don't. I mean, like, there's so much of it that should be pre-done, right?
Mhm.
Like, you stand up for voir dire, if it just says, money damage or, non-economic damage, that's all you got, and you don't have a script that you practice, folks, now I want to talk to you about these human losses. We call them non-economic damages, like pain and suffering, or the loss of enjoyment in life, or humiliation. So, whatever, how do you feel about these things? If we show you the evidence, do you feel comfortable putting a dollar value, whatever the fucking question is. But the idea is, you have to know the question before you stand up there, and you have to practice asking it so it looks like, it's a well thought out question and not something that you just read off the piece of paper and it has no emotional connection to it, right? And I mean, that's what you need to be doing for, voir dire. It should be scripted. And we talked about Clark earlier in the dark arts, like all of his, because he wants to do a separate voir dire class, but it's all scripts. It's all scripts that impact and influence the unconscious mind of your jury.
Yeah.
And practicing them. And when the jury talks to you, well, what you say back to them is somewhat set.
Clark is, I think, I love Clark. I think Clark's absolutely brilliant, and I can't get enough of him and what he has to teach.
Yeah. And so
I can't wait to go back to the next Dark Arts boot camp, actually.
I know, September 9th through 13th. I think there's still 2 spots left in that. So what were your big takeaways once you've got there and got your mind into it from, the Dark Arts boot camp?
So with Clark, for me, really seeing in effect how you can use voir dire as a way to embed your story and the values of your case, as opposed to a way to eliminate people with biases against you, or any of that stuff. Like, just the way he uses voir dire and the way the case is already proven before you even start your opening, just phenomenal. And then with you, you were making a joke earlier, but I did tell you I didn't understand your teaching style at first. With you, what I learned was this idea of getting used to really practicing a presentation, even if it's not your own case, just to get into the habit of practicing and getting muscle memory and looking at every little bit of your presentation on a camera and the value of that. It was good, because I hadn't always done that. And, I've caught myself since then walking a little haphazardly and then going, oh no, you need to plant yourself, and you need to be welcoming, and you need to create this space. And when you're performing and you start wandering around, you're not just distracting everybody else, you're distracting yourself. But when you get more intentional and you really think about your physical control of your body, not just whatever's flowing through your mind, it really does impact your ability to connect with people. And you just got to practice. Like, it would be absolutely insane, in my opinion, to go into a courtroom with a catastrophic injury or death case and do your open for the first time, or your close. I can't imagine.
Oh, no, I can't imagine it either. But so many people do that. They're like, oh, I want it to be authentically fresh for the jury. I'm like, okay, it's going to be something. I don't know. It's going to be authentic, but the authentic of, you being a shaky, nervy, looking at the ground, looking at the ceiling, hands, fists clench. It's amazing what the video shows. So many people, they stand up there and their hands go like this while they're talking. I'm like, who are you trying to fight?
I like to combine the two things together. 'Cause I do actually agree that a lot of the best arguments do well up from a very personal place that doesn't necessarily need to be. So I don't necessarily have a
Wait,
script.
I'm,
But when
I'm
it
not,
comes to like the
I'm not
evidence,
disagreeing with that. When I say a script, first of all, a script is necessary to learn the fundamental performance skills, because great performance mirrors the unconscious mind. Like when I first started training with Clark, he said, yeah, it's all about making the unconscious conscious. That's it. And that was like,
Carl
when I
Jung.
told you that, and that's when it's like, because unconsciously, we're all great storytellers. When they're from our own lives, when we start telling a story, we transport into the story. Our facial expressions change, like especially if it's a story that has an emotional connection to us. Like when I think about people that really piss me off, and I tell if I, I don't want to. It's like obviously even talking about it gets you pissed off, right? Because
Yeah, but
you go back into that moment.
do you know the rest of the quote though? That's Carl Jung. Until you make the unconscious conscious,
Wait,
it
hold
will
on.
control your
Well, it's like
actions, and
fate
you will
and it'll
call it
rule your
fate.
life. Something like that.
Yeah, it will control your life, and you will call it fate.
Yeah, I remember that because like I read that book before I went. I think
Mhm.
before I went to the trial lawyers college, it was like I'm Becoming Human or something like that by
It's such
Carl
a
Jung.
brilliant quote to bring into the legal realm, though, like, trial world, because that's exactly what the juries are doing to a lot of us. Is their subconscious is ruling our verdict, and we're calling it fate, and we're saying juries are completely unpredictable, or juries are this, or juries are that, and it's because we're not leveraging their bias, as Sari Delamotte would say it, or we're not speaking to their inner ear, as Jerry Spence would say it, right? Like that's where the real magic is speaking to their subconscious.
Yep,
People may
and
think
that's
that's
why
crazy, but that's what
and
a
that's
lot
why.
of big verdicts are based on that.
Yep, and when we're teaching performance skills and teaching like hand movements and especially like the hand movements, because like the case we're working on now is about it's a trucking case, and it's actually one of Joe Freed's cases, but it's about a truck going down, down US 411, and I'm like, and you see my hand is like looks like a C shape, right, and it's relaxed, and it's like this is the unconscious, universal unconscious sign language for 18-wheeler semi truck. And somebody says, well, how do you know that? I was like, just close your eyes and picture a semi going down the road and actually visualize your hand moves and open your eyes and look at your hand. And I'm pretty sure it'll look like a little C. Just like if you picture walking, and your hand is slightly, is open and at like a, what is it? Probably like a 45-degree angle. And that's you
Mhm.
walking. And it's like, and so when you start to realize these things and you start to look for the sign language and you start to be able to identify it, then you have to constantly train yourself, right? I mean, luckily for us, the skill that I think is the most important to develop is the skill of connection. And every human being that we have an opportunity to talk to or see or meet every day, we have a chance to practice our connection skills, which means do we make eye contact with people before we start talking to them? Are we intentional with our facial expressions? Like if somebody that we want to like us, I mean, do we intentionally have a slightly warm face instead of like a resting pissed off face? Like even like the clerk at the store, it's like, the desk person at my condo, that's not a very fun job sitting there 10 hours a day for $20 an hour. And I can sit
Yeah.
there and be like, hey, do I have any packages? And like I don't give a fuck. Okay, excuse me, do you have any packages for me? It's the same question.
Hey, I got a question for you. Do you think that those skills kind of, or at least the skills that you should utilize, kind of change a little bit from region to region? Because I've heard like Dixie travels, Yankee doesn't, right? Like those Southern lawyers are so charming, and
That's
us
true.
Northern lawyers are so cold and calculated. And I'm like, where
Eh,
do you,
maybe,
do you
you know
think it
what?
changes a little from region to region?
I don't, I mean, maybe it's like, look, I always
You come
teach,
in Worcester and try to connect too soon, boy. I don't know.
well, here,
I don't know.
I always tell people the same thing. Look, when I teach, what I teach is my best practices.
Yeah.
And I believe there are best practices for every area of trial. And of
Mhm.
course, I believe that I have developed the best practices for witness prep and direct examination. And I practice it all the time. And so I think my best practices are getting better and they continue to evolve. I think there's a best practices for cross-examination to train the skills of cross-examination. And then because once you have the skills, then you can apply those skills to any aspect of it. And that's what we do now. We train in the class, using the defense medical expert, defense medical examiner cross, which teaches all the fundamentals, which is, leading questions only, one new fact per question, looping, which means to establish a fact and repeat that fact in the next statement. Most people never do that. It never crosses their mind, right? Because they've never practiced it.
Ooh.
Dropping the taglines like right, correct, isn't it true? Or if you don't drop them, at least allow a pause between the statement and the true. And I think true is better than right or correct because those have like a harsh sound at the end. Your face almost looks harsh where you say true. Plus you're looking for the truth, but dropping the filler words like and, so, okay, etc. that everybody does, because everybody has a challenge with silence until they realize that they do, and then they intentionally do something to fix that. But cross-examining in the present tense, like how does somebody tell a story? Like to me, it's like hard to tell a story in the past tense now because I don't think about stories in words. I think about stories in images. And therefore, it's easy for me to remember stuff. If somebody does an opening statement from their case, I'd bet anybody and give them 5-to-1 odds that I can do the story of what happened more effectively than that person did on their own case, listening to it one time. Because I'm not thinking in words and I'm seeing, okay, where are we looking? Are you creating an illusion here? And the ability to take a story and create a 3-dimensional hologram is a real skill. But it's a skill that anybody can develop if they first get shown how to do it, get some chance to practice it, get some feedback, especially video feedback where you can see yourself. Very few people videotape themselves. And when they do, they look at it by themselves. Well, how are you going to get better if, you already think you're there and you have no ability to critique yourself, yet you're watching your own video and calling that practice? That is not practice. That is performing. That is performing. But I was saying there's best practices for presentation skills, which are the performance skills of opening statement and closing argument. When you get up there, have you practiced making connection with every single one of those jurors, looking them in the eyes just for a moment, and consciously in your mind, not talking to any juror twice until you talk to every juror once. No juror 3 times until every juror twice. That you've been intentional with your inclusion, that you kind of weave the jury together. You just don't go ding, 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 ding in the lines you're talking to people, but you pick one juror from the left side, the right side, the middle, the top right, the bottom left, you're just weaving it together and being unconsciously mindful of who you've spoken with. And so you're bringing everybody in early. So it's not like 3 days into the trial and you look at a juror, for the first time, they look at you and they look away like, oh, why the fuck you paying attention to me now after 3 days? You finally noticed me here, because that's what it feels like. And as a trial lawyer, when that happens, it can throw you off a little bit. You're like, fuck, I lost that one. I better get the other 9 or 11, whatever I got left, right? I mean, and to learn these best practices, first it takes time. And, you have to see what they look like. You have to get an accurate mental image of what is the best practice in cross-examination. Oh, but I was saying about the cross-examination, learn these fundamental skills. Learn how to use a flip chart. Very few lawyers use a flip chart and cross. And I asked them why. They're like, oh, I got bad writing. I'm like, you have bad writing. That's a reason not to use one of the most effective tools in the courtroom. How about you practice your freaking writing before you get to the courtroom? You
like the flip chart?
The flip chart's the most killer tool there is for teaching across.
Think so?
Slows you down. You put one topic per page. You write it down. It creates an anticipation trance while you're writing. So it's like impartial, objective, and complete. And it's like, and you write impartial. Well, while you're writing it, they know what you're writing, but they're staring at it anyways, right? And you step away from the board, bam, impartial, right in front of their eyes. And you put a number 2 underneath it. Like, oh, what's the number 2 for? Oh, now you've already got them curious about what's coming next, right? Paying attention. The whole idea is attention control in that courtroom. What is the jury paying attention to? Well, the great trial lawyers, guess what? It ain't no random act of what they're paying attention to. Everything's intention.
I'll use them with some witnesses, but I only use them if I can anchor a concept. So if I'm using a flip chart with an expert or like a 30B6, whatever is getting written on that flip chart is something that I already embedded and designed on a flip chart in opening and on a direct, so that I know that when I'm writing something, not only are they processing it as I'm writing it, I want them processing the earlier concept that I've already associated with that word. So like I don't use flip charts like some people write their story out 1 page at a time.
No, I don't. That's not what I'm talking about.
I have no objection to that. I just don't do that. But if I'm using a flip chart, I'm embedding some type of concept that I've already defined earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's why on cross-examination, it's a teaching tool. Plus you look like a professor up there writing on the board. So again, best practices, right? And all I do is demonstrate what I think are best practices. I tell people, look, you got to be authentic to yourself. You got to be comfortable with it. If it feels awkward to you, it's going to look and feel awkward in front of the jury. So practice it until it doesn't feel awkward, or if it still feels awkward, don't do it. I frankly don't care, right? It's your verdict.
It's a hard dichotomy, right? Because you're right. You got to be comfortable in front of them, but also you got to break out into your comfort zone. Like people who are taking up notes for a speech and holding notes because this is what's comfortable, or holding the podium because this is what's comfortable. Like, you're right, you have to get comfortable in front of a jury, but you also have to break out of your comfort zone and get rid of those crutches, or you're just going to be
Oh,
so ineffective.
I mean, like when I've watched CVN and I watch people reading their opening statements and closing arguments, but then some of them, still get,
How do you get CVN to come in? I want that so bad.
oh, well, they have it.
When I just had a trial in Providence Federal Court, and they do theirs on Zoom, and the judge was laughing because we had like 200 or 250 viewers, which he said they've never had more than like 10 before. And I was like, yeah, that's my mom, my wife, my in-laws, everybody over at Ketch's law firm.
Gotta have
But it
fans.
was great, dude. It was so
But
cool.
CVN comes up to Massachusetts. You just got to let them know you have a trial that maybe they're interested in.
Oh, you request it from
Yeah, you got to
them?
call them up and be like, hey, I got this trial. This is why it's interesting. This is why people would, because they're there to create content, right? And so,
Yeah, I got to get better at all that stuff, as you know.
yeah, well, you shoot your information over to me, John. I'll shoot over the people I know at CVN, let them know you're a trial lawyer worth watching. And plus, if you're on CVN, then you're getting yourself recorded in real time so you can really see what you like. Because I did that with my buddy Sagi, because he had this last trial was on CVN. And, after his opening statement, he's like, what do you think? I'm like, I'll tell you after the trial because I don't want to fuck with your head and your mojo. No, no, no. Tell me now. Tell me now. So I go through each piece of it. He's like, you're right. Oh my God. I'm like, you're looking at the floor and you're talking, I think he's gonna be pissed at me, but it's like his AV guy was up there and there was something fucked up with the AV. And he's like looking at the guy like, serious, come on. Cause it's but like in a stressed tone. Whereas like Mark Lanier, when his AV's fucked, he's like, oh, John, whatever his, right. He's like, oh, he's so friendly and nice to him, right? Because most of the people are the AV guy, are the guys getting orders. And when they're getting barked at by the guy who's the honcho, that's not good for rapport,
Yeah.
right? But you're so sweet to everybody, just little things like that.
I can't imagine any scenario where Mark Lanier doesn't always pick the classiest,
Oh
most
yeah.
effective
No, I
response.
mean,
That guy is amazing.
no, he's a pro. I mean, but I
Unbelievable.
think he's, currently probably the best presenter when it comes to what I consider to be great presentation skills, which is the skill to create holograms and transport the jury into it. I put him right there at the top. I mean, there's people that are close, like a Nick Rowley's close, but like Mark looks like he's been
Rowley,
coached on
yeah.
performance, okay? And the people at the top of the game,
Yeah.
when they start getting coached on performance, then they really, they really, really, really get better faster, right? Because they already got to where they got on their own instincts and their own, this is me. Well, you take me and you put 2% better on you, that's like the Olympics, right? I mean, the difference between the gold medal and not being on the stand is sometimes a 1/10 of a second. But that's how close these games are that we're competing in. That close. That's why we got to keep working every day just to get just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. The Dark Arts Bootcamp, Omaha, Nebraska, September 9th through 13th. Dave Clark will teach you about the unconscious mind, conversational hypnosis, applying NLP to trial lawyering, how to embed stories in voir dire and throughout trial. And when you're not doing that, you'll be practicing with me and my coaches on your performance skills, creating the holograms, creating the connection, transporting the audience into the story. So they just don't hear the story, but they actually experience it. There's still 2 spots left. We'll see you there. We got sidetracked. So the dark arts. So you learned, embedding the stories and the rhetoric and the betrayal structure, with Clark. And, and how is the application of those skills, the strategy skills that you've learned from Clark coming along for you, Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I just did it in Providence Federal Court in Rhode Island. It was what a lot of people thought was a really long shot case. We had a client that I won $1 million verdict for her for employment discrimination in 2016 against the city of Providence. This time we were saying that they retaliated against her because of that verdict. So the jury knew that she's already getting retirement benefits. They knew that she already had $1 million verdict. They knew, a lot of stuff. There was a big fight about whether or not she was entitled to a different category of disability. And I used Clark's voir dire methods that the defense kept trying to strike everyone because they were completely committing to these concepts that absolutely drove my case before the open. And I was very convinced that we won that case before we even opened it.
Now, as a federal court, you don't get a lot of voir dire in federal court, do you?
In Rhode Island, you do.
Wow.
In Rhode Island,
You
In
don't
Rhode
even,
Island, there's a judge out there who's now the administrative judge there. His name's Jack McConnell. He was a Motley Rice plaintiff's lawyer.
wasn't that nice? Very few. Wow, that's an unusual guy. Probably took about a 98%. Probably went making from $10 million a year to $150,000 a year. So you can do that when you make enough money to live the rest of your life. You go, play
Yeah.
being a judge on a federal bench.
Yeah. But there's 3 judges out there in Rhode Island, and they're all great, and they all work together. And he's influenced it a lot. And all 3 of the Rhode Island federal judges are allowing panel conducted voir dire in civil cases.
Do they have that in state court in Rhode Island?
Yes, they have very deep panel conducted
Oh,
voir dire in
great.
state
But
court.
do they have,
Yeah.
I thought voir dire is just coming to Massachusetts.
Yeah, voir dire is hit or miss in Massachusetts. Maybe 15-20% of judges will give it regularly. A lot will never give it. Tough to get panel voir dire in Massachusetts.
What was your verdict on the employment case? Your long shot?
1.7. It was 1.75 million, and then with interest and stuff, came out to just a hair under 3.
What was the offer before trial?
No offer. In fact, we were so worried that we couldn't meet some of our elements that we'd actually offered to go to a mediation and we would settle the case. If they just gave her a fair hearing for her disability pension, we would drop the case. They didn't have to pay money. They wouldn't even go to a mediation to discuss that. They were so convinced they were going to win.
Well, hopefully
$3
the city
million
of
is-
hopefully Providence learned a valuable lesson from this about being nice to people.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I just got the email this morning that they just mailed the checks. They're not even going to appeal this time.
Damn, dude, that sure is nice getting paid. I'm looking
Yeah.
for that day myself. Get a $3 million check. Even if I only get 10%, I'm okay with that. Okay, I realize we got to pay the client. We got to divide it amongst all the people that worked on the case. It's a team effort. I'm okay with it still. Today's not that day, but my day's coming. My day's coming. That's why I'm so glad. Even though people had a great time in Vegas last year at Caesar's Palace in October, I'm so glad that I'm not doing a fall conference this year. But you better be in Huntington Beach next year, John Martin, June 10th through 13th at the Paseo Hotel, because last year we had about 820 people, and you were not one of them. Neither was Richie, and neither were any of your people at Catches. But next year you got 10 more months to plan, and I'm planning I am planning the greatest event ever.
That's
Like
what
a
it is,
whole
June
new
10th through
level.
the 13th.
June 10th through the 13th, but the 5 days before that, there will be a dark arts boot camp. So you might want to be there for that, because that is like the coolest experience, because then you're down at the Paseo for basically 10 days and, training in a small group with the greatest, and, really improving your skills. But then the 9th through the 13th, like on the 9th, there's going to be a golf scramble in the afternoon for people that like to golf and hang out and, have a cocktail. But there's also going to be like a pickleball outing for that other group that's a little more, athletic, unless you play doubles pickleball. That's a little bit closer to golf. But, then I'm gonna rent out the restaurant at the Paseo. It's called The Range. It's a great restaurant. It's like 200. It's like a small restaurant, like 200 seats, 250 seats. But I'm gonna rent it out on Tuesday night and do a dinner for everybody who's there the day before the event. Because it's going to be pretty awesome. So make sure you have it blocked off, dark. Tell any judge, whether they're a federal judge, tell them you don't care. You have an obligation.
I will be. I think your conferences are the best. I haven't been to Huntington yet, but I've been to Vegas, and that was amazing. So, and I've heard Huntington's even better.
Ask anybody that's been to Huntington and Vegas, they'll tell you Huntington's so much better. Because, buying out the whole hotel makes a big difference. We got theme parties every night. We got 4 lecture tracks, 8 workshop tracks, top trialers of the country. And it's such a community feel because, like in the workshops, we do the Zoom meetups with people ahead of time. So people get to know each other. We're doing, and this time, we're doing a Zoom every month, like the last Thursday of the month for everybody who's registered, just for people to start to get to know each other before they get there. Kind of, if they want to make suggestions for speakers or content, I'm open to that because, I build this for them. Obviously I'm doing this to run something great, to run a business, but the business only works if everybody that's coming wins, right? If all the students coming are learning shit that blow their mind, and the people who exhibit, if they're meeting lots of new people and getting an opportunity to explain their services to them, because most of them have very valuable services to help plaintiffs lawyers. But if they don't ever have a chance to have a conversation with somebody, how are you going to buy something if you don't know how it's going to help you, right? Like, how you know how much Eve is going to help your trial practice and change things for you if you stick with ChatGPT and you never even do a demo with them, right? I mean, if you demo with them, they give you like a tryout package and you do it for 3 or 4 cases. Well, either right? Either this is making your stuff way better based upon the investment, or it's not. But you don't know until you understand how it works, and then, give it a shot and give it some, give it a dry run. That's what it's about. So Huntington Beach is gonna be freaking awesome. Don't forget about that. But we're not doing Vegas because we got to get. I've got, still. Although I'm excited though, I got this civil rights case I'm looking at up in Medford, Oregon. I met this young attorney at the last AAJ, and she comes up to me. She's like, "Hey Dan, I really like your TLU on demand." I'm like, trying to flatter me because it works. And then she's like, I'm like, you should be like that. You should do my boot camp because if you want to be a trial, she's her face like that. She's like, "I have one before November." I'm like, "We have a couple." I'm like, "You got a case?" She's like, "I got this civil rights case in Medford, Oregon, and what these police did was."
I got a civil rights case in Umatilla, Oregon.
What are you most proud of professionally, John?
Professionally?
Yeah, your professional accomplishment. Is it a verdict? Is it changing a law? Is it changing a life?
Tough question. I think it is changing the law. Back in 2016, we had a verdict. Then in 2018, a First Circuit Court of Appeals that made sexual orientation a protected class under Title VII, which had previously been excluded. There's a special way that you have to go about it, but that was very significant. I thought that changed a lot of things for a lot of people.
Pretty exciting when you can, because if you're one of those people whose currency, we all have currencies that we work for, right? And obviously the most ubiquitous is money. Money helps, money makes everything. But when one of the currencies that you deal in is goodwill, or like that, that feeling you get from helping others.
Yeah.
And the more people you can help, that's one of the, great joys I get in my life is, putting on a conference, 800 people coming together and having an amazing 5 or 6 days, or be able to create this content, put it on a digital platform where so many people can watch it and it can change their lives because they go into court differently prepared, and they get a verdict that's just commensurate with the evidence. And now they feel like a winner instead of a loser, those kinds of things. And
so I think, most of my cases are construction workers or people who get injured on the job. And I have a whole chain of guys who send me texts on a weekly basis of their new house, their new truck. They've taken their kids on a vacation for the first time in 7 years, or wives, that their kids are now going to private schools where they were left as widows, right? Or they're just these amazing things. I guess there's 2 things there. One is that they change their lives, but 2, that they care enough to keep me included in the new life. It's just unbelievable how I can be sitting there complaining or feeling a little bit down about how busy I am, and then somebody will show me how their life is now, that they've had the settlement or they've had the verdict, and I'm like, I got no problems, man.
I know. Yesterday I got a video text from this guy. His name is Justino, and he was a family lawyer in Chicago. And he wrote to me, and he was, I don't know what I said, but I'm like, it was like June 5th. I'm like, "Hey buddy, you want to be a plaintiff's lawyer? You find a way to get your ass out here to Huntington Beach, a place to stay. I'll hook you up with the tuition. So there'll be one less obstacle for you to overcome to change your life." And he sent me this video how he's got this new job in West Palm Beach, and he's all excited. And, he's like showing me out the window. He's got a view of some body of water. And he's like, "Dan, I got a new life. And so much of it, I really am so grateful for you." I'm like, "Dude, go out there and kick some ass." So,
I love it.
That's what it's about. I like that. You were talking about our civil rights cases there. So I was talking about Medford, Oregon. And I'm like, because civil rights cases, they really get me juiced up because, for being a criminal defense lawyer for so long and dealing with lying cops, because I just nothing I hate more than the abuse of power. And of government, especially cops, because they're we trust them so much. And or somebody's in jail. This was a jail case, with a guy who, and guy he's paraplegic, and they, just dropped him on the floor, smacked him across the face when the guy's handcuffed behind his back. It's on video too. And it's horrific. And you're like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me that this is craziness, that this is going on still? And they know it, and they just don't care. So what's your civil rights case about up in Oregon?
My case is a paraplegic who is a prisoner, and his conditions of confinement were so brutal and the medical care was so bad that the state court judge granted a habeas and released him, entered findings that his conditions of confinement were unconstitutional and in violation of the 8th Amendment. And now we're prosecuting the claim for damages against
Well,
some of the medical providers and the state. And it's unbelievable. It's horrific. They gave this guy one catheter a week and told him to wash it in his sink. But the problem is, in prison in Umatilla County, Oregon, at Two Rivers, is you have a stainless steel toilet and your sink is the back of the toilet. Take it out yourself, clean it yourself, put it back in yourself. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just
horrific.
the nurse was changing his pain and nerve medications to lower amounts than what his doctors had prescribed because she decided that the county policy or the DOC policy was going to be the maximum nerve medication they would give is about half of what his doctor prescribed. So the guy's in agonizing pain all the time. They don't give him any physical therapy, even though physical therapy. They have 9 emergency contempt hearings because the first order just said give him the medical care prescribed by his doctor. 9 emergency hearings over 9 months where they continued to flout the court's orders before he released them. I mean, it's just horrific.
It is. It's just amazing what they do. They get away with it for so long. They'll continue to get away with it until they're held accountable. It's just the way life is. So one final thought, John Martin, is advice to young trial lawyers, because you know, for the most part, are a self-made trial lawyer, right? I mean, you had to figure this shit out for yourself, read books, get guidance, you know, find your path, find the way.
Don't fall into the settlement trap. I mean, as far as getting good, okay, there's all kinds of different things that you have to do. You have to read, you have to practice, you have to go to conferences, you have to find mentors, draft people to be your mentors. But the one thing that stops everybody from getting where they want to be is they fall into this trap where they allow their own fear and their insecurities and their own financial condition to turn them into defense advocates and force people to settle or try to convince people to settle or that you have to settle every case because you can't risk a loss. Don't fall for the settlement trap. If you have a catastrophic case, if you have a wrongful death, go get somebody to be your mentor. There will be a line out the door of great lawyers who want to help you with that case and share that fee with you. They will teach you. You will get 10 times more, 100 times more, even 1,000. I've done this personally. I had a guy who was about to settle a case for $2 million. One of Richie's referrals. One defendant settled for 12 a year before the trial. One settled for 16 during the trial. A $28 million recovery on a case that almost settled for 2. This shit happens over and over and over at our law firm. Don't fall into the settlement trap. Don't fall into the easy way. Their game is not designed for us to win, even when we think we've won. Just don't fall for the settlement trap.
Well, that's some real succinct, solid advice. I would say, somebody says to me, wait, John, before we leave, how do people get a hold of John Martin, Esquire?
My cell phone is 774-249-2331. Please text me because I'm in court a lot and I will call you back.
All right. And so if somebody's asking me how to become a great trial lawyer, I would say that definitely need to find a mentor. And it's not easy to find mentors because you can't just call up somebody and say, hey, be my mentor. I mean, you could, but it's usually not very effective. But if you meet the person in person and develop a connection with them, well, it's a lot easier for you to call them because they know who you are and advocate what you said about the co-counseling. It's like you get the case of your life. You know, if you never had a 7-figure verdict and you got an 8-figure case, it might be a good idea to get an 8-figure trial lawyer who's been there before many times and have seen the way to get there because, you know, big verdicts are a result of, you know, and consistent ones is really a result of patterns and pattern recognition. And those great lawyers, you know, obviously they got the confidence themselves because most of this game is a confidence in the game. You don't get confidence from getting your ass kicked. In fact, the opposite happens, right? And so, but they got the skill set, they got the confidence, and they got the systems, and they know the patterns. And they're, like you said, they're going to 10x, 20x it, teach you along the way. So, and it's better for your client because if you're, you know, you're a real lawyer, the thing you should be worried about most is what's going to happen to your client, and not your ego, and not like you're, you know, being to be the big swinging, you know, big guy up there. Instead of like put your ego aside a little bit and say, you know what, I need help. And I'm going to get the help and I'm going to get the training. I'm going to get better and better. But so you got to get a mentor. You got to practice. You got to practice performance skills. That's hard. Most people like to sit on their asses and think and strategize and theorize and never actually get up and practice cross-examination, practice direct examination with your client in front of a focus group. Have that client cross-examined by some other lawyer so they understand what that pressure feels like of being called a liar in front of people, and so they don't get all defensive and angry and they just talk to the person like they're confused, and we're going to unconfuse you, Mr. Defense Lawyer, because you don't know the real story. So we're going to straighten you out. And, in constant study, watching the breakdowns of trials, studying the trial guides books, studying the strategy, talking about it all the time, getting work groups together and getting on your feet, practicing with the cases. So that's what it takes. But the great news is anybody that wants it, John, it's out there for them.
100%.
All of it's out there for them. So that's why I tell people all the time, today's the greatest day to be a trial lawyer, because if you don't become great, it's only because you made a choice to not become great. It wasn't because the world was conspiring against you or the information wasn't there for you.
I
So
think that's right. I mean, if you want a blueprint, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, there's no excuse to not become great if you want to be great.
well, there's a lot of fallacy in the 10,000 hours, because if you just go and swing the club for 10,000 hours, you ain't going to get great at golf. You're just going to be very consistent at whatever you're doing, you're going to be consistent. Whereas you want to be great, you got to get coaching. You got to, engage in deliberate practice. There's a book called Peak, which is like, the science of high performance, something like that, by Andres Erickson. He talks about deliberate practice and applying the methodology of deliberate practice to being a trial lawyer is really what it's about. All right. Well, I got to get to I unfortunately have to go back to the dentist today because I had my first root canal last week. And not only got to go, I'm like, root canal, boy, I was there for like an hour. The guy charged me $2,200. I'm like, what do you think? You're a lawyer? My goodness.
Well,
But
good luck.
anyway,
Thanks for this, man. This was a lot of fun, and good luck at the dentist. Ouch.
thanks, buddy. You have a great day.
Me too.
Ready to train with the Titans and set records with your verdicts? Register for our live conferences and boot camps at triallawyersuniversity.com. Start getting your reps in before the big event by going to tluondemand.com to gain instant access to live lectures, case analysis, and skills training videos from the trial lawyer champions you love and respect, as well as pleadings, transcripts, PowerPoints, and notes for a roadmap to victory. Join the group that continues to get extraordinary results. Trial Lawyers University, produced and powered by LawPods.